Abu Dhabi. This is not a dream. It's a desert turned green. It's a place of islands that touch the sea. Islands of work and islands of play. Islands of hope and wonder. Full of heart and full of laughter. It's a place people call home. A place bathed in light that becomes magic at night. It's a place people come to work, study and dream, to create what the world has not yet seen. It's a place where ideas are built at the speed of thought, that celebrates what humanity can achieve. It's a place that rewards people who wonder what tomorrow could be. Dream wonder, live wonder, make wonder. Abu Dhabi, find wonder.
Hi everyone, and a warm welcome from the Middle East. My name's Dan Murphy and I'm a correspondent with CNBC International. We're thrilled to have you join us today. First, I would like to begin by thanking Abu Dhabi and of course Hub 71 for hosting its own Goals House and for inviting me to moderate this panel with our distinguished guests today. Our panel is called The Great Green Reset, Rebuilding Sustainability, and over the next hour, we're going to be discussing how governments and businesses can look towards a post-pandemic recovery, exploring local, national and global solutions towards a sustainable future. I would like to first welcome His Excellency Awaidha Al-Marar, Chair of the Abu Dhabi Department of Energy. He and the department are responsible for the planning and direction of Abu Dhabi's energy sector. I would also like to welcome Her Excellency Sheikhah Al-Dhairi, the Secretary General of the Abu Dhabi Environment Agency. She and her team are responsible for the air quality, groundwater and biodiversity of Abu Dhabi's desert and marine ecosystems. And also joining us live from Washington, D.C. is Vivian Schiller, Executive Director of the Aspen Institute. Vivian is a global media executive, a former Vice President at NBC News, and she's held leadership positions at Twitter, the New York Times and NPR. We're also thrilled to be joined today by Alan Smith, the CEO of Agthia Group. It's an Abu Dhabi-based food and beverage company, probably best known for its Alain brand of bottled water. The company has production and bottling facilities here and across the region. So a warm welcome to you all. It's great to be with you and thank you again for joining us. Your Excellency, I'd like to begin the conversation with you if I can, please. How is the agency addressing this great green reset to advance the sustainable development goals here?
First of all, Dan, thank you for your kind introduction. I'd like to welcome the panel and I'd like to welcome you in Abu Dhabi. This event is important for us. This event actually brings in experts from around the world to discuss the best toward our future generation. When it comes to sustainability, this is the core business of our living. The goals have set clearly our targets. Government, us in the Department of Energy representing the government, all our strategies are actually considered. The fundamental part of it is being supplying the energy with regard to up to a standard, making sure it reaches everybody. And this part of the world, we're talking about energy and water as well. So the goals themselves are in the core of our business. We focus on sustaining the development and making sure that energy is devoted toward the well-being of human capital plus the development of the country as well. We've done a remarkable stories that we'll be covering shortly. On the ground, obvious, people always ask, Abu Dhabi is rich in oil and gas, but that did not let us actually stop there, but bridge toward something that could be offered for the generation that yet to come.
Absolutely, and Dr. Sheikhah, welcome into the conversation as well.
Thank you, Dan.
I think as His Excellency points out, it's no secret that the UAE is one of the world's largest exporters of oil. I think when you look at the country today, one of the reasons it's been so successful and one of the reasons it's risen so quickly is because of its ability to commercialize its vast oil reserves. At your department, how are you balancing that economic opportunity with the obvious threat that this poses to the environment?
Dan, thank you so much for inviting us here to be among this honored panel members. Actually, for me, the pandemic, and for the entire world, the pandemic has been so positive on the environment, and Abu Dhabi and UAE had already its own share. During such a difficult time, Abu Dhabi have, through the Environment Agency, have recorded 60% drop in transport-related pollutant. We also recorded 22% increase in specific bird breeding colonies, as well as there has been a lot of sighting of biodiversity near urban areas. I would like to talk more about the pandemic because it has taught us a lot of lessons. One of the main lessons that nature is supreme and we are not the custodian for it, but we are merely a small part of it, and everything, including us, is interconnected and linked to it. And we need more than ever to learn how to respect it and how to become more responsible toward nature. Pandemic also taught us a great lesson in our part of our lifetime. The deforestation, the overexploitation of natural resources, and the losses of habitat made those species and nature much closer to us, which meant that we are impacted by diseases. And we need to protect nature and also combat illegal wildlife trade to create a safety net between us and between the nature, and also to ensure the continuation of ecosystem services to minimize climate risk and natural disasters that we have seen happening around the globe. Also, I'm sure, Dan, you have read the latest CPD report. It shows that the 20 Aichi targets hasn't been met, and also it goes the same for biodiversity, the 3 biodiversity SDGs and the climate SDG 13, 14, and 15. And in my opinion, at a global level, we haven't done enough as collectively as governments, as private sector, and also as civil society. And post-COVID, I think we really need to make sure the balance between economy and sustainability and also society. We need long-term strategies. Long-term strategies because they are much more evident in making the change towards the nature, because short-term stimulus and incentives are due to just to give you a temporary and short result. Therefore, I think, and I strongly believe that we need to invest more in sustainable infrastructure, which should be around planning, sustainable city, planning more of sustainable transportation and clear energy. And more, I believe that governments need to invest in nature by manifold, because we don't need to stop habitat loss and degradation only, but we need actually to double the effort that is being put to protect the nature and to protect ecosystem for the well-being of the humans. And finally, to me, I think we need to better govern rather than to be governed by the forces of nature.
That is so fascinating. So what you're saying here is that, first of all, nature is an investment opportunity, an investment class, if you will. But at the same time, just to reflect on what you were saying, the pandemic has had a net positive impact on the environment, but this is an opportunity that we can't let go to waste, right?
Definitely.
I wanted to bring Vivian into the conversation here as well. Vivian, one thing I've been reflecting on throughout the course of this pandemic is just how much community expectations in a range of issues have all changed. And I think expectations have particularly shifted when it comes to sustainability and the climate and the environment. What does the Great Green Reset mean to you?
Well, my background and the lens through which I look at the world is the way that we are communicating with the public through the mainstream media and through social media. And because that is how most people get their information. And so it is both an opportunity and a risk. It is critically important that the media focus attention on these issues. And this is a challenging time because there is so much competition around other news. There is obviously a global pandemic. There are geopolitical events happening all over the world. There is, at least in the U.S. and in Europe, a reckoning around race. And unfortunately, a lot of the issues around sustainability have sort of fallen to a lower priority because it feels not as urgent, even though in the long term, it is probably what is the far more important. So, in terms of a reset, I think it's got to be a reset of the attention of the media based on facts, based on science, and also a focus on the information that we get through our feeds, whether it is, whether we're looking at Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or WhatsApp or YouTube.
Sheikha, I can see you nodding your head there. Did you just want to respond to what Vivian said there? Do you agree that perhaps the media isn't putting enough attention on this?
Yes, definitely. The media have to put a lot of attention because we need to target all audience, from government to civil society to private sector. And the media is the best and, to me, the only tool where we can reach all levels.
I wanted to bring Alan into the conversation as well. Alan, it's great to have you joining us. I think the impact of the pandemic has been profound on the private sector, and it's great to have you here to give us an insight into how your business is responding to some of these challenges. First of all, just give us an overview as to how you're thinking about the Great Green Reset and how COVID-19 has impacted the business that you run.
I think what we've seen during the pandemic is obviously a shift in consumer behaviors. Obviously, when we look at our water business, it's more so moved to home delivery versus the traditional retail channels that we've seen in the past. When we start talking, and when you look at that channel, obviously you're using reusable water delivery. So in terms of single-use plastics, or in terms of helping the environment in that regard, it certainly helps. But if we look at our core business and we look at Agthia Group and our strategy around sustainability, there's four key elements that we're trying to do to help the environment and to make it sustainable. So it's built around fostering healthy communities. So some of the products that we've released in our water portfolio, like vitamin D enhanced water, Bambini, which are geared towards helping immunology in our consumers. We've enhanced product sustainability. So in February this year, we announced the launch of our plant-based bottle, which is really an incredible innovation that's come with a lot of research and development in terms of a product that is 100% recyclable, 100% compostable, biodegradable. It uses 60% less energy consumption to manufacture it. So initiatives like this are really helping to drive the sustainability agenda. And then resource management for a preserved environment. 99% of the materials that we use at Agthia are recyclable, 99%. The next challenge for industry is how do you convert that 99% of recyclable materials into 99% of recycled materials? And from that point of view, we work closely with the Abu Dhabi government to look at the circular economy, see how we can get these products back through recycled and back into use. So the agenda is quite large.
Absolutely, and it's such an interesting area to be watching as well. When you look at single-use plastics, for example, I mean, a lot of these bottles end up in landfill. This is something that we'll talk about in just a moment, but I also wanted to shift the conversation back into the energy sphere, which is really critical here in Abu Dhabi. Your Excellency, when it comes to greening Arab economies whose social and economic longevity have long relied on oil, it's still a major challenge, right? Where is Abu Dhabi in the energy transition today, would you say?
I think picking up where we have ended on the pandemic, and I think the pandemic have hit the energy sector as it also hits other sectors as well. But the special about the energy sector is that the pandemic have actually stress test our system from security of supply and also the benefit for the environment, because we actually seen less of mobility around the world where actually have a positive impact on the environment, as if sending us a message of saying we need to change our behavior toward the consumption of this energy. Now, despite of low maybe prices of oil, but that did not actually stop us toward our main objective, which is going for a renewable, less harmonized to the environment. During the pandemic, though we've actually slowly a little bit on our mission and our target, but we truly focus on delivering and awarding the biggest project as a solar plant in Abu Dhabi called the Dhafra with a 2 gigawatt with the world record, the least cost generation of power. We've also continued desperately with the main focus to reach the target of actually operating, and in fact we've operated it. Unit number 1 on Baraka nuclear power plant. Today, as we are speaking, they are sending energy to the grid. So despite of all of that, it's actually as a tester eventually. We've also have thought of other means of storage, for example. We've looked at hydrogen, we've looked at waste to energy. All of that actually came through moving toward that diversification of our energy mix. Now, government, policymaker never stopped. We saw pandemic as a tester and a testing to our journey. It will make us much stronger. We may think had actually divided us, but in fact, truly it brought us together. Though with all the challenges we are facing, but we are now, I can assure you, Dan, that we are much, much stronger than ever before.
Absolutely, and the conversation around this energy transition continues to evolve. I know it's something the government and the leadership here are very, very focused on.
Now, with regard to your early point of having, again, oil rich country as a hydrocarbon, UAE and particularly Abu Dhabi have invested or listed some of their revenue towards sustainability. 12 years ago, we've established Masdar, the renewable concept city. We've invested much earlier on R&D and research of renewables. So we've never stopped to rely heavily on oil and gas, but we're actually moving on. We moved on to renewable, we moved on to nuclear. Then we also have in place virtual generation of power. We have 108 megawatt of virtual batteries that are dispatching energy to the grid. Now, all of that came through a clear vision toward achieving prosperity of Abu Dhabi. Now, that's a win-win situation. That is a win situation to Abu Dhabi and UAE, but also at the same time, a win situation to the whole world because it actually meets the global sustainable goals.
Just on this, I know the UAE, Abu Dhabi in particular, has a target to be, I think it's 50% energy production renewable by 2050. Is that still intact, even though we've seen the challenge of the pandemic?
You will be surprised that we'll exceed that.
You'll exceed that?
Yes. So far we are at 38% soon, once we have the 4-unit already operation in Baraka. We are going major investment. Recently, we have invested 70% of the investment on renewable energy and solar, actually here in GCC. I think Abu Dhabi either the 2nd or the 3rd ranking worldwide on investment on concentrated solar power plant.
So by how much do you want to exceed that? Can we say 60%, 70%, 100%?
We will keep that for the media to talk about it once we achieve it. But then truly our aim is prosperity, our aim is livability and well-being of people. Yeah,
indeed. I also wanted to just pick up that conversation we were having before as well with regards to single-use plastics, and maybe just bring it back over to Alan on this. Dr. Sheikha, you can also respond here. Alan, you were mentioning before you're a major supplier of single-use plastic bottled water in this country and around the region. What initiatives has the business put in place to ensure you're moving towards a more sustainable path? You mentioned one initiative earlier, which was a push towards recycling and also a change in materials, but this is a major concern. What are you doing to address it?
So I think there's a couple of things. I mentioned that 99% of our packaging today is recyclable. The challenge then is how do you get that packaging actually recycled and make sure that it comes back into the economy? So we're partnering with the UAE government in terms of how do we do that? So things like recyclable PET, how do we get that back? How do we get that validated for reuse in food production, for example? We're partnering with Veolia, who are a global leader in sustainability, to look at how we can start actually working with consumers to collect the PET packaging back from the market and put it into the recycling and to recycle it. So there's plenty of initiatives that we're working on. And I think, as I said as well, on the plant-based bottle, this is a long-term investment. The team have been partnering or working with Total, who developed this resin-based material that allows us to produce a bottle that uses 60% less energy, for example, than the packaging we use. If it goes to landfill, it decays within 80 days. So from that point of view, it's very, very, very environmentally friendly. But the challenge of this material is, if this gets working very closely with some specific strategic partners to trial this in the market, it also comes with challenges around barrier resistance. So it doesn't necessarily have the same shelf life, only has 2 months shelf life. So it's a long-term investment from the company to really try and move the agenda on sustainability to a long-term solution. I look at it a little bit like the work that the car industry's done on the electric cars. It's a long-term investment. You have to keep pushing at the technology to get it to a sustainable level. So I think the company is very proud about the work that we're doing on this, and we're launching it to a few specific customers in the next 2 months.
Okay, so that'll be fascinating to watch. Dr. Sheikha, I want you to respond to this as well, because I was looking at some data around this. Here in the UAE, 11 billion plastic bags are used annually, which is the equivalent of 1,182 plastic bags per person per year, so quite a lot. The global average is just 307. Yes. So why is it so high here in the UAE, and what is the agency doing to address the plastic pandemic?
I believe it's high because of the lifestyle, and it's similar to also different places around the world. It's much easy to use a plastic bag which lasts for 3 minutes and then use another one. So it's more to do with personal preference and lifestyle. Here in Abu Dhabi, with the support of the leadership, actually we announced last year that Abu Dhabi will be free of plastic bags by 2021, and all the government entities will set first this example. And this policy tackle 14 different items from the single use. However, we thought because of this issue to start with the bags, and the beauty of this policy was the engagement. It wasn't put only by the regulatory body, which is the Environment Agency, but we have engaged heavily with the private sector, with the community, from awareness and plus from understanding also the challenges, because the Environment Agency representing the government does not want to announce a policy that is impossible to implement. And one of those stakeholders that we had an engagement with is definitely Agthia, how we can help the private sector to again recycle those products. And I believe also that this policy and this issue is a long journey that EAD and Abu Dhabi is already announced its readiness to start working towards.
So can we say yet what this type of policy, the type of impact it would have on a business like Alan's?
I can't really talk on his behalf, but down the line, it is positive. It is positive if all the private sector has adopted this policy. We have worked together in also investing in R&D to come up with much more economical and recyclable materials that could be used in bottling and could be used. And Alan and his team have been already proactive, well ahead us with the bottle that they produce from a plant-based.
Alan, did you want to respond to that? How do you see this impacting your business?
So I think you're talking about single-use plastic bags. That's one side of the business, and that's about educating consumers. And I think the retail partners have already started doing that. I think when we talk about plastic bottles, then we're very much committed to using recyclable PET, but not just trying to do it as a company, trying to encourage consumers as well to engage in that. That's why we partnered with Veolia to set up this way of actually getting the bottles back into the system and recycle them and then back in. But the challenge is, and what we're working with the Abu Dhabi government and Veolia on at the moment is, we need to make sure recyclable PET can be used. So what percentage can it be used in our bottles today? And for that, we've got to make sure that it's robust, that it stands up to the climatic conditions of the UAE, which is obviously very hot temperatures. But that research is ongoing, and the initial results that we've seen are very positive. The next step after that is we then need to get food-grade recyclable PET companies set up here in the UAE, and we've already struck a partnership there with a company who wants to do that. Obviously, they're looking for us to make a commitment in terms of volumes, and we're ready to do that. And on a broader perspective, it's not just Agthia that are prepared to do this. It's also, there's a discussion ongoing through GABWA, which is the Gulf Bottled Water Association. Three of our the main players together with Agthia here in the UAE have also put recyclability and sustainability at the heart of the agenda. So we see very positive trends in this regard. And as Her Excellency said, we believe we're well ahead of the curve in terms of driving down this route.
Vivian, you've heard all of the contributions here. Come back into the conversation and give us your take on this. I think one of the most important questions to ask here is, of course, the use of plastics and changing consumer behaviour really starts with young people. So how do you get young people on side? How do you better educate them to bring about sustainable change? And does the media and perhaps the tech industry have a role to play here?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so critical. I just want to say I'm really so encouraged by this, listening to this conversation, in part because it is vitally important to think about infrastructure, not just as the physical infrastructure that all of my fellow panelists are talking about, but the intersection of that with the societal infrastructure and the digital infrastructure, because the adoption of the public and education to the public is going to be critical. So we need to look at these things holistically, and it sounds like we are. You're exactly right that the key to this is young people. First of all, it is their world. They are the ones who are going to inherit this world when we're and lead this world when we are all gone. And also just by nature, and I think this is not a new phenomenon, young people tend to be more sort of activist around issues that they care about. We certainly see that when it comes to issues around climate change and sustainability. They have more and more tools at their disposal to express themselves. It's really remarkable to see the kinds of creativity and messaging that really takes off on platforms like TikTok. What is key, of course, is to make sure that young people in particular have the information that they need. And this is a combination of the education system, of course, in every country, as well as the news media combined with social media. One of my biggest concerns.
Oh, well, it looks like we might have lost Vivian just for a minute there. We'll try and get that connection back and come straight over to her in a moment. But what we're talking about here is the public-private partnership as well, and perhaps less of a partnership, but more of a collaboration. Dr. Sheikha, you were discussing before about the work that you've been doing with Alan and the business that he represents. Your Excellency, I might come to you on this as well. How important are these public-private partnerships and perhaps public-private collaboration when it comes to addressing these issues and achieving the Sustainable Development Goals?
I think then it's all start with individual accountability. It's truly start with us first, with our family. So if we start looking at this as we are unaccountable, it starts from there. Building that accountability and working toward a sustainable way of living, it will reach everywhere. It will reach the businesses, it will reach the government policymaker, it will reach the private sector. I think the harmony between us and the more we work together with regard to a better life, a better well-being, we will understand how can we truly make the facilitation for the businesses to work with the environment that we all opt for, that is safe, clean, and can be saved for the future generation, as rightly said by the participation on this panel.
Dr. Sheikhah, you agree?
I do agree. I do agree with His Excellency, because sustainable environment or sustainability cannot be achieved by only government or by only a private sector. It has to be achieved by the whole government, private sector, public, individuals. And this is why our leadership here in Abu Dhabi had put a lot of emphasis to integrate and bring also the public and private sector on board with us. I would like to give here a good example, which is Ghadan 21, launched with a 50 billion dirham initiative, which aimed at an investment, bringing the private sector to invest in the infrastructure and other areas. And we have been working with the team, and we will be working with the team for the next 3 years to unlock nature sites here in Abu Dhabi in order to bring unique experiences for the community to interact with nature through the private sector and through the public, which will work as a tool for outreach, as a tool for awareness, as a tool to embed the sustainability across everything. But the beauty also of this fund for me is the highlight of the technology and innovation that promotes. And I strongly believe that innovation, technology, artificial intelligence, but also big data can play a big role in addressing the environmental challenges that we face today, whether here in Abu Dhabi or globally. And for that, EAD have also sponsored, with collaboration with the Department of Economic Development, Technology Innovation Prize, where we invited pioneer inventors and startups to come up with innovative solutions to address challenges in waste, in water, and also to address certain challenges when it comes to desalination plants, how we can use the byproduct of brine water to be part of the sustainable construction material.
So we've spoken about plastics, we've spoken about public-private partnerships. I wanted to shift the conversation and just talk about food security for a moment as well, because this is a major issue for the UAE. The UAE imports about 90% of the food that it consumes, and that's because we have really high temperatures out here and a lack of arable land, even though it's beautiful desert. Unfortunately, we can't grow anything in it given the climate. Alan, I thought I might come over to you on this, and maybe you can just talk to us about how you're engaging with this food security challenge in some of the products and businesses that you operate.
So I think from a food security perspective, we're also operating, apart from, we talked a lot about water, we produce animal feed, we also produce flour, amongst other food products. So if we just take a look at our flour manufacture, we have around 150,000 tons of capacity in Abu Dhabi port, which feeds into our flour mill. I think when you look at how we reacted and how we worked in partnership with the UAE government during the onset of the pandemic, I think both Agthia and also the broader manufacturing companies here in the UAE reacted very quickly, not only in securing the materials to sustain that, to be able to make sure consumers still had access to it within a very short space of time. So we were part of the government panel that looked at how do we make sure consumers can still get access to products? The other side that I'd like to raise is the feed side of the business. The animal feed side of the business is really important for food security here in the UAE, because the work that our R&D team are doing in developing, highly nutritious feed that helps the farmers of the UAE in terms of being able to increase their productivity, increase their output in terms of animals, and also the work that our team are doing in educating the farmers on how to feed the animals, what type of nutrition to use at what time of the day, how to deal with heat stress. All these kind of things are very important, enabling the farmers to increase their output. And we had a visit yesterday from the Director General of Agthia at our facility, and we were showing him some of the investment and we've agreed with them again that we're going to partner now in terms of strengthening that relationship here in the UAE. So it's a very important part of the agenda, and going back to the discussion about partnership with the government, absolutely, we're working hand in hand with them on this side of things.
Your Excellency, is this something that your agency also covers? Is food security part of the remit?
Yes, somehow it is, because we do care in extending the longevity of the non-renewable groundwater resource, because it's part of our mandate, and that's where we get involved in doing a lot of research with the farmers in collaboration with ADFSA, the food authority here in Abu Dhabi, to provide scientific information around what is the minimum requirement of water for crops that would definitely be playing a big role in our food security. But also on the marine side, we are responsible to conserve our fish stock, and that also plays a huge role in food security. And with the support provided by the leadership, and definitely with the right regulatory framework, this year we were able to celebrate the increase in our food stock from 6% to 29%. And also we are working very closely with the private sector to promote aquaculture, and mainly aquaculturing local species to lift some pressure from the wild fishing.
What's also fascinating, and I've spent a number of years in the country now, one thing that I've seen, one trend that I've noticed, is that ag tech is thriving here because there's startups that come out from international destinations looking for somewhere to start, maybe taking on a bigger challenge. There's startups here in Abu Dhabi in the desert who are growing tomatoes, for example, who are growing vegetables.
It's make a big difference adopting those high tech, from using 10 liters a day to probably less than half a liter, while producing a high quality, a good product.
Dan, if you allow me, and panel allow me as well, I cannot think of separate silos on those issues. If we're talking about water, if we're talking about food, environment, it's all connected. If you add as well the energy, then we're talking about the nexus issue. So we cannot, if we want to ever achieve the sustainable goals, let's talk on harmony among all of this. We cannot look at individual item and say we will make perfect of it, because any strings you move around in this model is actually affecting others. It will affect the last thing that you may even not thought about it. It will affect economic, it will affect energy, water, livability. I think whenever we brought this up, and I truly thank the Gold House, is to actually talk about it, to share our experience and see how those are linked. So Dan, I think we need to look at things collectively on one fabric, and say what's the optimum for this region. What could be good at this region may not be good in the other region. What's also good in the others, it may not be good for here. We've talked about a very harsh environment, There are solutions as long as we are actually squeezing our mind, putting all our thoughts together, make sure that the strings are being adjusted to the best to this land, we would do it, we would achieve it.
Absolutely, I think, and to that point as well, let's get right to the question, and perhaps the most important one of the day. What would you say is the biggest challenge, the biggest barrier holding the UAE back from achieving its sustainable development goals, Your Excellency?
Abu Dhabi and UAE have done an excellent job on GSD 7. We've achieved affordable energy and water for 100%. We've achieved almost a 98.5% with regard to fuel for cooking. The issue of CO2, we are still on the border average, but I can tell you a good news that once the nuclear plant are fully operated and the new, or the one is already operation, the new Abu Dhabi, once Al-Dhafra is in operation as well, that will stabilize the CO2 target emission. Now, is that it? No. We're still committed, and we are strongly committed to a well-being and development of the economy with respect to the environment of Abu Dhabi, UAE, and the region as well.
Sheikha, your thoughts on that question? What's the biggest barrier?
I will say it in one sentence because I don't want to add to what His Excellency have said. Abu Dhabi, UAE have done a great strides and achievements when it comes to environment protection and sustainability. Our challenge today is transboundary issues, which it's not in our control.
Can you explain that a little bit further? What do you mean by transboundary issues?
When it comes to air quality. Whatever I do here locally, I will still be facing transboundary issues coming from the neighboring. Even with the fish stock, we are celebrating its improvement and increase. It's migratory. Everything around environment, I call it is a migratory. Whether it's air, species, even the dust is migratory. So if we don't collaborate collectively as countries, we will always have this challenge.
So where are we at on that collaboration then? When it comes to addressing that issue, if it is very, very important to achieving the goals, how do you encourage further collaboration around the region?
I think there has been also good collaborations, even with the countries that are far away. But I think in this region we need much more closer collaboration, not only MOUs and agreements, but real implementation on the ground.
Your Excellency, you agree with that?
I totally agree, and I think I would go back to the same issue again. We truly need to determine what's best for us, our culture, our position when it comes to the boundaries, and make sure that we do the best. I also believe that we need to invest in our education with regard to the future, preparation of the future leaders, because if we pass this to them, I'm sure they will find a solution.
I also just wanted to ask one more question on achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Do you think that the economic and financial consequences of the pandemic have perhaps made it harder to achieve these goals in this country and around the world? Obviously, we were on track pre-pandemic, but we've seen how governments, we've seen how central banks have had to respond to this crisis, and they've put profound measures in place. Has it set us back?
On the energy sector, no. And the example for that is the big announcement of Al-Dhafra project, the 2 gigawatt project. Another example I gave earlier is truly the speed up the startup of the nuclear power plant. So for us, it did not stop us. I think the only challenge that the pandemic brought in is how the energy can be assured for supplying other frontliner sector, making sure that the power and water is actually is there to back up any emergency cases. I can tell you we have not faced any issues as a major problem. We've noticed some peak on the residential due to people working from home or school from home, but that is well below our capacity installed.
Sheikha, did you want to add to that before I move on?
I guess it's been so good for the environment, and I believe it also elevated the portfolio of the environment even better, even more.
It's made it more important.
Yes, yeah. So still, the pandemic have brought us a lot of positivity when it comes to what EAD should do, and also it have increased our portfolio even more.
I think we have Vivian back with us. So Vivian, I'd like you to come back into the conversation here as well. We're talking about how governments around the world are being asked to do more with less. Is that a challenge in your opinion?
Oh, it's without a doubt, it's a challenge. You know, it is the biggest challenge. I think actually the pandemic has created a challenge around sustainability goals for reasons of mind share. It is just, at least where in terms of, you know, I study the media for a living, and I'm seeing a significant decrease in attention to these issues. Yes, to a certain extent, there has been the environmental conditions have improved as a result of the pandemic, but it is getting far less attention. And you know, we are seeing environmental the repercussions of climate change in the U.S. with, you know, unprecedented wildfires, increases in hurricanes, record heat, and yet there's just not enough science and fact-based information, and it does get crowded out by misinformation. Different people have different motives to challenges that we face, and so this is a big area of concern for me.
Absolutely, Vivian. Thank you again for that contribution. I think we can move on to getting some final thoughts now, and Your Excellency, I'll come back over to you on this. What does the future of Abu Dhabi's sustainability efforts look like moving forward from here, from your energy perspective and looking through the lens of energy?
Is more solar, more renewable projects, more technology when it comes to utilization of digitalization. The future is a way of storing energy and power, such as investment on batteries and investment in hydrogen as well.
And why are those areas important? Why have they been prioritized over others?
Simply because we want to diversify our energy mix. Abu Dhabi relies heavily on oil and gas. We rely a lot on gas when it comes to generation of our power. Once the 4 units are in operation around 2024, we would be dropping that to 50%, and that is a tremendous achievement. But that is not the target for us. The target is actually to go more of renewable. Our climate here and our sun ray is actually an optimum for such harvesting of the soil, and we would continue going on this path.
Does this mean perhaps more nuclear facilities in the future?
The nuclear facility today is actually a big base load for us. So I don't see in the horizon more of nuclear, but what I see is we've gained the knowledge and the experience on how do we build nuclear with a good alliance with international institutes. And that alone is actually very rich knowledge that can be shared to the region if they need to. But I see more of solar than nuclear on the horizon.
Dr. Sheikha, what lessons can we take moving forward to ensure we rebuild long-term sustainability and not fall back into old habits and actually turn optics into outcomes when it comes to addressing the sustainable development goals?
As I mentioned earlier, I think investment in the long-term strategies is the best way to achieve such sustainability, and mainly in infrastructure and planning more sustainable cities and providing more renewable and environmental based energies, investing in nature and put the nature as in the center of the sustainable economy, sustainable societies and sustainable environment.
How far away are we? Can you put a timeline on it yet?
I don't think we are far away, Dan, because when I think about environment protection and sustainability, it's always been at the core and in the heart of UAE leadership. We are here today, me and Engineer Awaidha, to continue this legacy of late Sheikh Zayed, who always have thought of the environment as one of the priorities. So I think we are already there. From Environment Agency, we have still plans, although we achieved actually the international targets for protected areas network, we are extending that target voluntary. We are adding 10% more because we believe that we need to protect more. We are actually also increasing the targets for the fish stock for food security from 30% to achieve 70%. So we are not only following the minimum targets that has been set by the international organizations or SDG. We have already challenged ourselves here with the blessing of our leadership.
So on the right track, but still
Yes.
more work to do.
Yes, definitely. And this is a continuous process.
Absolutely. Vivian, over to you. How can we use the learnings of this COVID crisis and recent social movements to build a more informed media landscape that helps to drive progress towards these sustainable development goals?
All right, there's multiple steps needed, and they all need to happen simultaneously because they are connected. First and foremost, education, education, education. For young people, there needs to be some science-based around challenges. Number two, the mainstream media, legitimate news media, needs to pay more attention. We can see from the pandemic how a sustained coverage, unrelenting coverage, can actually improve conditions for the public. The third is we need the tech platforms that provide the feeds to us, whether they are more private communications around like WhatsApp or public like Facebook, Twitter, and others, need to become much more vigilant than they have been around misinformation and disinformation that travels through those channels that present unscientific and in fact completely made up sustainability channels. And we need to look at all of those things holistically, see are all interrelated. And so we need to just as we need to look at sustainability, issues about climate and water and poverty together, so we must when it comes to media channels.
Yeah, absolutely. And Vivian, just while we're on this topic, how do you address distrust in the media and in institutions? This is clearly a major issue in the United States where you are coming into the election, which is only just a few days away. I'm just curious to get your take on this as a media executive, addressing distrust in institutions and in the media.
It's a crisis. I mean, it is not specifically talking about the U.S., but just more broadly. It is, part of in the toolkit of autocrats to create mistrust in institutions, mistrust in science and fact-based information, and to create a vacuum into which there can be unchecked power grabs or unchecked efforts to try to tilt policy. And unfortunately, we're seeing in many places around the world a distrust in a sort of what was generally a foundation of agreed upon truths. And now we have different realities and mistrust happening in institutions. And it is a crisis that we must use those same three levers: education, mainstream media, and social media together to try to rebuild that trust.
Indeed, and just one more question to you on this, Vivian. With regards to education, do you think that the public and private school system is putting enough emphasis on this issue within the education system?
Yeah, well, it varies. In the United States, education is very decentralized. Every school district makes its own policy. So you have an uneven focus on education around sustainability throughout the United States. I think in most other markets, you have sort of a national education agenda, but there must be unrelenting focus to make sure that fact-based education rooted in science around sustainability, what the reality is, what we can do to have an impact, as well as some of the great advancements we're seeing that I've been just listening to and in awe of over the last hour is just critically important.
Absolutely. Alan, I also wanted to get some final thoughts from you as well. From a private sector perspective, we were talking before about how this pandemic has obviously had a profound impact. What are you doing now as a business executive to build back better?
I think listening to the government, one thing we always know about the Abu Dhabi leadership and the UAE leadership is they don't just think about today, tomorrow, and next month. They think about the next generation. And I think we as Agthia, we have a rolling 3-year strategy on sustainability, and we're going to continue down that path. The pandemic is going to continue to impact us for some time. But I think we think from a food security perspective, what's right from a sustainability perspective. And look, these are investments for the future. So as the leader of Agthia, I think, together with my leadership team and the board, we're very committed to the partnership with the government, and we're very committed to the objectives that the UAE leadership set down for the future.
Do you have any advice for other business leaders as they navigate the complexities of a post-pandemic economy and society?
I think we need to focus on consumers. One thing that's happened is an understanding what consumers' needs and wishes are for the future. We touched a little bit on education. I think we underestimate how many of our consumers look at our products today, their expectations of what we deliver, their expectations on sustainability, on plant-based protein, on all of these initiatives. I think what we've seen during the pandemic is consumers getting back in touch with their kitchens and making products at home, and realizing the importance of family in many cases. And I think these are things that we need to tune into. And manufacturers these days need to realize that what COVID-19 has done has taken us much closer to our consumer base, and listening to them, understanding them, and addressing their concerns and what's right for the next generation is going to be more important than ever.
That's a very valid point. Your Excellencies, before we wrap up, is there anything further you would like to add before we conclude?
Yeah, I think I agree with Ellen, because I started cooking in my own house.
So did I, but just not very well.
I think
he needs to invite us.
I think the pandemic have taught us this, is to go back to the fundamental and look at how do we live seriously and how do we make our living. I'd like to go back to whether Abu Dhabi is ready or not to move on. And I think Abu Dhabi is ready because we've actually opened all possible areas, especially from the point of technologies. The so far alliance we have with international countries have opened all the doors for us to think about agriculture from a technical point of view, producing, because I'm an energy guy, producing energy more efficient, utilizing water, and try to tap in changing people's behavior. And I think this is the most important message that we've learned from the pandemic, is changing the behavior to the fundamental of food, usage of water, and energy as well. Toward the end as well, I'd like to thank you, Dan, and I thank the Gold House for having such fruitful discussion that looks at things from 360 degree, share our experience locally and internationally. With that open heart, with that open agenda, we will reach the sustainable goals together.
Anything further to add, Sheikha?
I believe that we need to work collectively. We need to take bold decisions to make choices for safer and saner society. It is the time.
Well, I wanted to thank you both for joining this conversation today. Thank you for sharing your time. Thank you for sharing your insights. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. We appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much. And thank you to our panelists also joining us virtually, Alan and Vivian. We welcome your contribution as well. Thank you again. Thank you for watching on too. My name's Dan Murphy. I'm from CNBC here in Abu Dhabi. We're so thrilled you've stayed with us throughout the course of this conversation. We will be back with Goals House Abu Dhabi at the same time tomorrow, where we're going to be joined by representatives from the World Health Organization and others to answer the question, will the global pandemic fast-track the health revolution? So stay tuned for that conversation, and with that, we'll hand it back over to you. Thanks so much for watching.
Abu Dhabi. This is not a dream. It's a desert turned green. It's a place of islands that touch the sea. Islands of work and islands of play. Islands of hope and wonder. Full of heart and full of laughter. It's a place people call home. A place bathed in light that becomes magic at night. It's a place people come to work, study and dream, to create what the world has not yet seen. It's a place where ideas are built at the speed of thought, that celebrates what humanity can achieve. It's a place that rewards people who wonder what tomorrow could be. Dream wonder, live wonder, make wonder. Abu Dhabi, find wonder.